Imagine someone saying you cannot meet with anyone at all for 2 weeks. Take a look.
Indoors. To help break the cycle of transmission, there will be no gatherings with people you do not live with, either indoors or outdoors, during this 2-week period.
What? You know, a year or so ago, my friend Tommy Robinson was put in prison, in the most secure prison in the United Kingdom. It's their equivalent to Guantanamo Bay. It's called HMP, Her Majesty's Prison Belmarsh. And I visited him 3 times there just to make sure the lad was okay, because he had some troubles in HMP Onley. And he was in solitary confinement. He was in a special handling unit so he wouldn't be killed by the other criminals. That's a prison where there's Muslim terrorists. Michael Adeboyejo, for example, is there. Some notorious murderers and terrorists are there, so you put Tommy in with them, he's going to be killed. So they had him in a special handling unit called the Suites. Yeah, there's me outside Belmarsh. Obviously, no cameras permitted inside. I had to take off my watch. I had to take out my keys. I had to take off my belt. I had to take off my jacket. Strangely, the only thing they do allow you to bring in, yeah, he was arrested. The only thing they do allow you to bring into prison is money, oddly enough. So I met Tommy, and he was in solitary confinement, but he still did meet the warden once a day, the nurse once a day, and the guards who would take him to, he was allowed an hour of exercise a day. The guards had to deal with him in twos. No one could ever meet with Tommy alone. That was one of the rules of this special handling unit, which I think is a good rule. That means there was always another witness. There was less likelihood there'd be shenanigans. So he was in solitary confinement for a couple of months, but he did have that daily contact I just described, and I visited him, and his family and his friends visited him. But still, when I met him, it took 15 minutes before the conversation was joined. He was like mentally in a different gear. When you are in solitary confinement, it's like a sensory deprivation. You don't talk to people, you've been talking in your mind, you've been living in your mind, and you start to go slightly mad. And I don't know what the rule is. 1 week in solitary confinement, is that like 1 year in regular jail? I don't know. But the reason I tell you that 5-minute anecdote of visiting Tommy in Belmarsh prison is that that's what you do to a convicted criminal. In Tommy's case, it wasn't a crime. He was serving a sentence for civil contempt, which is outrageous in itself. But my point is, even criminals are not deprived of social intercourse. Even murderers and terrorists are not deprived of human contact for a day, let alone a week, let alone 2 weeks. And if they are, it's after a trial for which they were found guilty of some grave offense. And solitary confinement is what you do to people as an extravagant punishment, because it can drive you mad. And those visits I had paid to Tommy when he was in solitary, it took 15, 20 minutes of more sort of like me and the other visitors talking at him before he would loosen up. And then by the time the end of the visit, he was bantering and laughing at jokes and stuff. He wouldn't laugh at a joke in the first 5 minutes. Could you imagine sentencing an entire country? That's what they call Wales. They call Wales a country, they call England a country, they call Scotland a country. Together they're Great Britain, and added Northern Ireland, that's the United Kingdom. I think I got my nomenclature right. So a whole country like Wales, 3 million souls. Sorry, you cannot play that last clip again, the one that starts at that last one there. Play this. This was announced today by the tyrant of Wales.
Indoors. To help break the cycle of transmission, there will be no gatherings with people you do not live with, either indoors or outdoors, during this 2-week period.
Thanks.
They will...
You just can't meet anybody. You just can't with someone you don't live with. Let's say you live on your own. Let's say you live on your own. You were just sentenced to 2 weeks solitary confinement. You'll go mad in 2 weeks. Why? What did you do? You're not sick. Why are you being punished? Don't we quarantine the sick? Why are we quarantining the healthy? And by the way, you know, there are some people who like privacy, but even they want the ability to go out and see people. I've been listening to too much Morrissey lately. Take me out tonight. I want to see people and I want to see light. You know, we're social creatures. And if we choose to be reclusive, that's a choice. That's the opposite of being commanded not to see someone, not to see anyone, not to gather with anyone you don't live with. What if you live alone? What if you are a grandma or grandpa who's a widow or widower? You're lonely. You're 75, let's say you're 80. You got married at 25. Your spouse passed away at 75. You had 50 years of marriage. You've been a widow for 5 years. You're a grandma who lives on her own because you're not frail enough that you got to be put into a home. You're living at home, but you like visits from your kids and your grandkids and your neighbors because you have a hole in your life because your soulmate and your spouse of 50 years predeceased you. And you live at home and you're proud of the fact that you live at home. You haven't been institutionalized because you're still sharp and you're still physically able, but you do, like all humans, want contact. Physical contact even. Maybe you want a hug or a handshake. You want to talk to someone and listen to them. You want to see them. For 2 weeks now, that little tyrant has sentenced you and 3 million other Welshmen to solitary confinement. I told you the story about what it's like to... Have you ever met anyone in solitary confinement? I'm guessing you haven't. I had not. It's very unusual to visit someone in solitary confinement, isn't it? I mean, how many regular prisoners are put in solitary confinement? I doubt it's even 1%. Maybe it's 1/10 of 1% of prisoners. And only briefly, it's a punishment. Throw them in the hole, you know. Maybe that's, if you get into a fight in prison, how do you punish someone who's already in prison? You throw them in the hole. I mean, someone serving life in prison for terrorism, what are you going to give them? Life in prison plus 3 months because they stab a guy? No, you throw them in the hole to punish them. But you don't do that for weeks and weeks and weeks. You do that for a day or two, and they come out and they're shell-shocked. And maybe they don't do that again. I'm telling you, I visited a guy who was in solitary confinement, I think it was 55 days. Now, he had visitors twice a week. I visited him several times. And he had people checking up on him daily. So even Tommy had visitors, like myself and his family. And I say again, the doctor checked on him. The doctor or nurse checked on him once a day. He was escorted to his exercise for an hour once a day. He did have some interaction with the guards, who he told me were nice enough. You just saw the First Minister of Wales sentence 3 million Welshmen to nothing, to sensory deprivation. Tommy was in prison. He got every day the nurse or doctor would check up on him. Every day. And he wasn't ill. You know, he's a pretty healthy guy. Every day. Every day someone took him to exercise. They probably didn't talk a lot, but they probably had a little bit of banter. So you're going sensory deprivation, full isolation, full solitary confinement for 2 weeks. Why? What did you do wrong? Did you rob a bank? Did you murder someone? Did you stab someone in the next prison cell? Did you get into a fight in the prison yard? Did you shiv someone? What did you do? No, you just made the mistake of living in Wales and thinking that you were in the United Kingdom of the Magna Carta, and a man's home is his castle. Semane's case. We've read that before, haven't we? Your home is your castle. Well, here's a little tyrant. You know, not even the king can come into your home without a warrant. Not even the king or the queen. Isn't that an amazing law? The tyrant cannot overcome your, and you may live in a squalid little shanty. You may live in a rented basement room with no windows. But if that is your home, it is your castle, modest as it may be, and no one can simply come in the United Kingdom without a warrant. And yet this little thug, this tyrant of Wales, has just said that you are not the king of your castle. He will say you cannot have anyone, not even one person ever, not even your own family members, if they don't live with you, can visit you. So that case of the grandma, the 80-year-old widow, who's active and with it and lives on their own but has daily visits from the kids, that's banned now. Is this the country that stood up to the Nazis and the Luftwaffe? Is this the country that won the Battle of Britain with those Spitfires, you know, doing mission sorties every few hours against all odds? Is this the country that built the British Empire on which the sun never set? Is this that same country? Is this that same country? What a deep embarrassment. Embarrassment, who cares about embarrassment? What a tragedy. That's an excerpt from my daily TV show that I do live at 12 noon Eastern Time. We talk about the news of the day, we play interesting viral videos, and most importantly, I take your questions that you chat to me through YouTube Super Chat. I think that's the funnest part of it. So tune in every weekday at 12 noon Eastern Time, only here at rebelnews.com.